Hi, my name is John Dixon. I'm the Vice President of Sales and Global Marketing here at Silicon Labs. And we are incredibly lucky to have Smit Patel, who is the Digital Health and AI Lead Director over at DiMe. So just kind of kick it off, tell everybody who is DiMe, what is the world of DiMe, and how does it touch with the kind of connected world that we live in?
Absolutely. Happy to, John, and thanks for having me. I think DiMe, Digital Medicine Society, we were founded in 2019, essentially right before the pandemic, where we were seeing this growth into health and technology, but also growth into challenges that were with health and technology. And our main mission is to how do we think about safe, effective, and ethical use of digital technologies and approaches to better human life and better outcomes and better health. And with that approach, I think DiMe focuses on three things. And how do we do is we try to sit at the intersection of health and technology. So thinking about how do we bring and build a community of all stakeholders, including regulators, payers, health systems, tech, health tech vendors, ethicists, clinical scientists, researchers, cybersecurity professionals, all together to build what does good look like for future of healthcare. And as there's a rampant growth of technology and innovation happening, I think there is this watershed moment that we need to do it right, we need to do it safe, we need to do it ethical, and we need to do it equitable. And how Dine does it is by three ways. One, we try to convene and collaborate with. So we run pre-competitive evidence generation projects, essentially bringing various stakeholders, multiple stakeholders, all the way from developer communities, payers, regulators, agencies, industry leaders, health systems, and clinicians to build that common frameworks and standards. Second is we build and lead. Our mantra is show, don't tell. And we don't just admire the problem. So if we think about diversity, equity, inclusions, and digital tools, and how do we not exacerbate the inequities, we try to show, we try to provide frameworks, we try to create tools and resources that individuals can pick and use in their daily lives to improve those. And then last but not the least, I'm a clinician by background. So education is one of the most important part we see. While there's a great development on tech side, we also have clinical colleagues and patients who may not know a lot about these tools and technologies. So how do we bring along the entire industry by educating about it so that we drive the progress forward together?
Yeah, I guess it's a lot of responsibility, and I guess it's something that's not necessarily the focus because there's so much innovation in different pockets. I think it's almost like a sphere just kind of exploding. So you're trying to keep the sphere ethical and on the right path for humanity, I guess. Really, if you look at that. So how, with all of these massive innovations that we're seeing, both in medical and also in tech, and that cross section in the world I live in has become more and more blurred between what is an FDA product, what is not an FDA product, how does the Internet of Things impact medical, and how does it impact what your purpose is? Like how do you see that for DiMe, and how do you try to pull all of those components, and AI, even I would say almost as another component of it, it's just accelerating the adoption and accelerating the need for what you're doing. So like, how does all that work, and how are you guys trying to get your arms around that?
Yeah, that's excellent question. I think what we try to do is we create the North Star on what good looks like. So when we think about building tools and frameworks and trying to bring the right stakeholders together, because we know that technological innovation is always going to be a couple of steps ahead or a couple of years ahead of regulations and policies that are in place. And that is something that has happened for over years. We also know that healthcare is one of the last industry to digitize most effectively and most appropriately and at scale. We know that yet we have seen banking adopt. Like 10 years ago, we used to still walk into the bank. We used to still deposit the check. Who thinks about today banking as going to a bank?
Yep.
All the digital transactions happen in financial transactions. We are not there in the healthcare yet. So as we think about building the right approaches, so thinking about development of the right tools. So I'll give you an example. Few years ago, we did not have objective measurements of measuring health. Like when we talk about sleep, I'm a clinician, and for a lot of disease and care management, we have to talk about sleep and physical activity of individuals and patients. Initially, it used to be like, yeah, I slept great. I didn't sleep great. A very subjective measurement and a tool. Today, with sensor-based technologies, we are able to measure how long a person is sleeping. Is it uninterruptedness of sleep? Is it 2 hours of sleep and then they wake up? Or what's the waking time? I think those are information we are getting. Also, physical activity. We can now measure every minute how many steps an individual is taking. For an Alzheimer's or Parkinson's patient, we're able to measure the tremors an individual has. So I think for the first time, we are objectively measuring health, which is very different through a lot of these digital tools. And I think the pathway to starting with the measurement is where we think about we need to have the right research and right frameworks in place right now so that as we think about measurement of the human health overall, we'll be able to drive a better progress forward. And we try to do it, think about the data governance, data standardization, interoperability, but also how does this research translate into real practices on the clinical side? So all the way on the end spectrum of clinical too.
Yeah, it's a lot of movement. Like if I think about personally, just myself, like I do a plug for one of my customers, Garmin. I can't live without this now because the data it gives me. Like I wake up and it tells me, is today a good day to go training? Is today a good day to relax for stress levels? What you need, like it's giving me prompts and it's synthesizing the data at this point. So I feel like this is changing already. The data, the AI piece, the connected piece is starting to change people's lives. I guess the bigger challenge now is like I'm a tech forward person. I work in tech. I've always worked in tech. Like, how do you take a patient that maybe isn't so tech forward and they're a health practitioner and the communication between them and the trust that all this tech is now kind of, people don't trust tech and it's medical, it's at their body. Like, what have you seen there, like from connected technologies or from any kind of data that they're taking from the individual people? How did the trust kind of factor of that between kind of practitioners and people really using this data? What are you seeing there? What are you seeing the trends?
Yeah, so we work with a lot of patients. Most of the projects we do, initiatives we do, patients is always at the center of the table because when we create, we call it meaningful measures of health. So, say for example, if we are building this digital measurement endpoints
Yeah.
for clinical trials, or if we are building or advising developers to build the products, we try to encourage them that use real patients, insights from real patients, because they have their own needs, they have their own preferences. And if you build as patients as partners approach and take patients as partners approach and use that for product development, I think the products that are being built are a lot more aligned to patients' needs, priorities, and preferences. And I think that is the very early starting component of building trust. But we also know that right now, patients' trust it takes time to build. There is ethical components, there are privacy and security components that we hear a lot of times when they have seen one case example in media that disrupts the trust, erodes the trust essentially from a lot of the digital technology. So how do we not just tell them to use the product, but invite them in the journey to use the product? And I'll give you a very good example. I'm a history nerd. And early in the 1900s, when elevators were being built by organizations, not a single person was stepping into this mechanical marvels, which people would rather climb 14 steps than step into this elevator. The companies were struggling real hard. And what they did is they put an operator, a human, inside the elevator. All the human did was open and close the elevator and just be there to guide what floors they're going.
That's funny.
What changed is people started seeing, oh, it's safe enough for me to go in that elevator alongside there's someone in there. I think it's the concept of behavioral design that we need to think about very constantly in terms of patients don't want or individuals don't want this digital tool to be another burden or another thing that they have to track, but rather that reduces the activity level. So how does that fit into their everyday life is something that also builds trust. So I think there are fascinating ways how we can build trust, but it starts with just talking to the patients and just involving them. What would they like to see as the products?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think when you have something that's so futuristic that you're giving people based on what they have today, you have to kind of draw the line between what they have today and what they have tomorrow. There's lots of examples like horseless carriages, which was cars. They'd literally put a horse, a plastic horse head on the front of cars when they came out first to go, this is what this does. People have to get their mental model around it. This has been fascinating. I think the last question I'll kind of leave you with is, what are the biggest things that you are concerned about when you look at all of these massive AI, everything's becoming connected, disposable, um, checking everything, synthesizing everything. What are the biggest challenges that you see in the near future that we're going to have to kind of work with, that everyone needs to be more kind of aware of?
Yeah, I think I foresee I'm going to talk about three of the challenges that are like staggering right now. We talk about cybersecurity,
Yes.
about while we have advancements in AI/ML, how do we think about the right validation, verification, and post-market monitoring of those tools? And then third is implementation science of a lot of these tools that also includes adoption through providers and patients, etc. So as we think about these three in archetypes, cybersecurity, we know that again, a historic concept. In 1980s, that was the first time, the first ransomware attack that had happened, that was sent to the AIDS Researchers Institute, which eradicated a lot of antiretroviral research that was done during the AIDS epidemic, was the first cyber attack. 30 years later, we still see the same uh,
Pattern.
scale.
Yeah.
At scale, we have seen United Healthcare. And I think the implications of cybersecurity, as much as we know it's a threat, but we have to make future proof. I'm a clinician. I've seen systems stopping. Like patients have to be, it's a nightmare looking into Grey's Anatomy happening into real life, where patients have to be transferred to different offices, different hospitals, um, delays in the pharmacies and billings for national prescription drugs that are being delivered through mail orders through 10 days. We have also seen the data loss. 43% of the data will never be recovered after a cyber attack in hospitals. And if we think about it,
That's a
yeah,
insane number.
it's 43% will never be recovered after a cyber attack. And if we think about it, the implications of these are so high that yes, we need to have SBOM, software bill of materials, in place. We need to encourage cyber devices having SBOMs across industry is one challenge. AI/ML, if we look at it, I think we are in a new era of AI/ML. While there's a lot of excitement, there is a lot of fluff, we also know we need to do it in a more effective manner so that we can have the right validation metrics, we can have right verification protocols, we can have right monitoring systems so that once an algorithm is being deployed, the output of those algorithms are not beyond hallucination levels or the data drift levels that can be concerning. Those are the things yet we have not as an industry figured out. And then the last but not the least, if you think about it, I have been in the digital health space for over a decade, and I've seen one of the largest challenges, the last mile challenge. The most unsexy part about is implementation. How does these tools get implemented in the clinical care setting without adding burdens to doctors, without adding burdens
Yeah.
or disrupting the workflows, and also adoption? So implemented in a way where patients have access to it, providers have access to the data, it's a safe and secure and interoperable, but also the experience of those devices are in a way that patients want to use it. And I think it will take a longer time, but the implementation science, if not done right, will create more gaps and more resistance to adoption of a lot of these tools.
That's interesting. I think it blows my mind what's happened in the last few years in the medical scenario, connected IoT, AI for medical. I can't even imagine what's going to happen in the next 10 years. And I guess that's what we're here to find out. Listen, Smith, thank you very much for your time. I appreciate you tuning in, and we'll talk to you next time.